Hey, I'm Matt Cropp, and am interested to have a conversation tonight about a worker co-op that's currently raising some capital and in the startup phase. It's the Lei Company Cooperative, which is listed on Crowdfund Main Street, and is had I've met their founder at the recent U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops event in Los Angeles. So Tiffany, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about how you got into lei making?
Okay, thank you, Matt, for having this and hosting this conversation. So my name is Tiffany Rose Naputi Lacsado, and I'm originally from the Mariana Islands, specifically Guam. And I started lei making about when I was like 10 or 11 years old. And I started lei making because I went to a Samoan church. And so my family, was searching for a church that had other islanders there. And my father somehow found uh, this Samoan church to go to. And through that, I mean, even though it was a Samoan church, they had like other islanders as part of their congregation. And we had a woman who was from Hawaii who was a member of the church. And part of the youth activities was to make leis. And so we made leis, we made corsages. We made a lot of like different kind of crafty things with flowers. And so that's how I started lei making.
And then how did you go from that interest to the idea of trying to get a lei makers cooperative going?
Oh, that's a really great question. So basically, what had happened was I learned how to make leis, and then had always been making some version of leis for families and friends as gifts as time went by, especially during like graduation seasons. And then I didn't go into arts and crafts as a career. I actually went into public health. And so for about 16 years, I worked at Oakland's very first LGBTQ youth services agency. It was called the SMAC Youth Center. And I went from there, and I also worked for Women, Infants, and Children in Marin County, which is a supplemental food program for women and children 5 and under. And during my time in public health, no matter if I was working with like moms and infants or like, elderly folks who were like suffering from HIV and AIDS, their number one barrier to health was the inability to participate in the economy. And so when I felt myself transitioning out of public health and kind of that realm, um, I realized that I wanted to be a job creator. And I didn't know anything about being a job creator. All I knew is that, in order to be a job creator, that I need to learn about business. And so then what I did was I ended up signing up or enrolling in an MBA program at Meridian University. And Meridian University is a university that's based in Marin County or in Sonoma County, up the California coast. But they're an international school, and they have this really progressive, MBA program that really went beyond the triple bottom line or beyond sustainability to regenerative economics and regenerative businesses, and really trying to regenerate our cultural environmental commons. So that is, that felt very much like the kind of business world and business ecosystem that I wanted to be in. So I signed up right away. And through there is where I got really exposed to things like cooperatives. We studied cooperatives, right? We looked at business as permaculture. We used all these different like human and evolutionary frameworks to be able to like think about the economy in different types of ways, like bring it back to oikonomia, or caring for our home. And so through that process, it was like, okay, this is like, well, what kind of business could I could I start? And for me, I also knew that I wanted my life to center in Pacific Island, in the Pacific Islander community. I had worked a lot in the African American community. I'd worked a lot in the Latino community at WIC. It was like I wanted to just focus on my own community. And I was like, well, what is a business or a project? Because the Lei Company really grew out of my capstone project in my MBA program. What is it? How is it that we can center culture and not get in trouble with the powers that be around authenticity? And what is a business that all of the Pacific Islands could rally around, right? So we actually have stopped really using the word Pacific Islander and use the word Pacifica, because it really doesn't look at the smallness of our islands, but of the vastness of that region, right? Like the Pacific Ocean is 42% of the world's surface mass. It's a huge place. So, so I wanted to center my work around Pacifica peoples, which are the peoples of Polynesia, Melanesia, and Micronesia. And I'm Micronesian. And so, it was like, well, what kind of business could we start? And it was like, oh, we could start a lei making business. We know, anecdotally, we know that there is a huge underground economy for leis. There's a huge street economy for leis during graduations, especially if you're on the West Coast of the United States. And it was like, well, can we build a business that centers our culture and our combined lei making culture, and really bring the cultural values of lei from being a street product to a shelf product, and can we do it in a way that uplifts ourselves as a people, from an economic and financial perspective, but that also, pulls lei making out of the floral industry and kind of all their really bad practices. So those were all the things that we've been really trying to grapple with and mold into our current business model.
Mm-hmm. So when did you guys get going and start doing business, and kind of what's been the experience up until now?
Okay, so we had our prototyping year, right? It was the basic, find a minimum viable product, prototype your sales, and so I think I first started selling leis in 2015, 2016. It was learning about cooperatives, right? Because I knew from the beginning, it was like, this needs to be a worker cooperative for many different reasons, right? So, kind of doing all of that research. I did a lot of research on, the economies in the Pacific pre-contact, because there are some things there that we've taken with us in our modern lives that translate into how different kinds of mindsets around financial transactions happen. So I would say that would be 2015, 2016. And then 2017, under a sole prop, we would, me basically, the sole prop, was that we then had our first round of sales. And at the end of that, we had then decided, we knew that we needed to raise money, all of these types of, all of the other kind of business formation types of things. And we were really blessed with an attorney, Jenny Casson, who pretty much helped fast track us into becoming a cooperative. So she really helped from the legal perspective, from the co-op development perspective, because she had equal exchange with her, her clients. Sarah in Boston were her clients. I mean, she had all these cooperative clients. She was just a wealth of knowledge about helping guide us into becoming a cooperative. And then we had our first round of sales. And that was pretty promising. That was more than any individual Lei Maker had ever made in our community that is not a part of the floral industry. Like we like tripled, most people only make about, 1,200, 1,300 in a graduation season. And at the end of that graduation season, we did around $4,500. And we were like, oh, that's a lot of leis, especially at that time because we weren't pricing them as well as we do now. That was like a lot of leis. And we were like, oh my gosh. And then we started coming up with all these like other creative types of leis to make that represented cultures, like different cultures. And so that was kind of our MVP prototyping year. And then when we became a worker-owned cooperative, and the reasons why I don't know, can we go into that now? Like, why we became a worker co-op? So we became a worker co-op. There are two reasons. The first reason is that we know that if we can get the marketing, to be able to like support our business model, that this really could be a way to uplift ourselves out of poverty. Like we know that, if we could build a business around Lei Making, get the marketing, that we need, get the sales support that we need, this is a way to really uplift ourselves out of poverty. So we consider ourselves a market-based solution to poverty. The second reason why we became a worker-owned cooperative has more to do with intellectual property and the respect of Lei Making as an intangible asset of Pacifica people. And it just did not feel comfortable to have a regular single owner business or even a partnership business. It needed to have, the structure where anybody who, is excited about leis, that cares about the evolution of leis, that cares about, using leis not only to uplift people out of poverty, but maybe even like change some of the really horrible practices, environmental practices that there are with leis in our supply chain. Like if, we wanted it to be open to any of those people that wanted to join in those different layers of the movement to be able to share in the business, because it doesn't, leis do not belong to any like one family or even any one island. The worker cooperative model, the cooperative model, for me, and I can only speak for me, was that it solidified integrity and respect to it as an art form that is accessible to all. Yeah, so those are the reasons why we became the two main ones that we became a worker-owned cooperative.
So now that you've kind of gone through, your test season and you've been sussing out kind of the market and looking to expand, so you're seeking investment through a public offering, so can you talk a little bit about what the resources that you're seeking to raise would allow you to do that you all aren't able to do currently? Sort of what would be the things that the investment sort of helps facilitate?
Okay, so we have a revamping of our investment. So our original investment had a higher level, like a higher minimum investment level, which was $1,000, and it also had a higher level in which we had to raise before we could actually access the capital. And so as of late November, we actually changed our offering a little bit from the offering that you actually had invested in, where we lowered the amount that we have to raise, which is $25,000. And then we also lowered the minimum investment to $250 to make it more accessible to people. So there, I want to talk about the two tiers. So the first tier was that we were trying to raise $150,000, and we, what that would have been able to do was really, pay for a lot of the marketing and the sales support that we need in order to really take ourselves to the next level. And the second, this newer revamping of our offer allows us to do some of that, but it also allows us to then continue raising money. That's what the use of proceeds are. So any money we raise, regardless of that level, really is to be poured into marketing. So we, at the end of 2017, at the end of 2017, in September of 2017, we became the official lei vendors, the only approved lei vendors too, for the Oakland Unified School District. And the Oakland Unified School District has 127 schools that we, have the ability to, and exclusive rights to sell at. But we don't have, the staffing to be able to do that. And so most of, I think, the money that most of the money that we were hoping to raise in this round of capital raising was to really build in the infrastructure to be able to do the marketing. I know marketing is really broad stroked, but when we're talking about marketing, we were talking about actually, sending sales representatives to each individual school to generate the sales that way, because that's what the school district really required. So our model is kind of sort of taken from the Jostens model. So are you familiar with Jostens?
Is that like the school picture type thing, or?
Yeah. So it's the school picture, the cap and gown, Scholastic, their book fairs, all of those kinds of vendors for the district have, they have dedicated sales staff that are assigned to those schools to develop the relationship. Jostens has like a 40-year relationship with Oakland Unified School District. They don't even, but when they first started out, they had to have people on the ground to meet with principals, to get that going on, and one of the things that have really affirmed at least that part of our business model, we were like, oh, we've hit something here that can create these sustainable jobs that we need, is that when we went to the procurement office at the Oakland Unified School District, they said, we've been waiting for a company to come for like 25 years to come and sell leis, right? Because our company has been vetted by the district. We have insurance that we can have listed the school district on our insurance. They know who we are. They know that having us vetted through the district allows them to decrease their liability. So how leis are sold now is that people just show up to graduations with their leis hanging on their arms, and they just walk around the crowds and sell. Because it is still sold primarily outside of the floral industry as a street product. Mm-hmm. And so schools were like, well, we don't know who these people are, us, and that's true of like lots of districts, especially across California, is where people just show up. And so for us, that is, being able to really not expand so much, but to really be able to create that infrastructure and sell in Oakland Unified School District really well is going to allow us to expand nationally. So the money that we were raising now is specifically to work with Oakland well, because if we can work with Oakland well, we can go to San Francisco, we can go to like all of the other school districts around, because most of these school districts do not have approved lei vendors. And so, that's kind of the broad stroke plan. And then, then the money that we are raising then supports the other things that need to go with that, like the digital marketing, like better product photography, all the sales reps that we need, like we should have one sales rep for every 3 schools. Like that's primarily what we are trying to do with this round of raising money. Because if we can do Oakland well, Oakland will tell everybody else, like, hey, this is these are who we're using as a lay vendor. We should, you should consider using them too.
So talking a little bit about kind of the workforce and folks who are making the lays and who the worker co-op structure will bring into ownership and kind of partnership around this. So the sort of skills that are required to make this product. You mentioned there's been this kind of informal economy where people will be like, oh yeah, so people who might have family knowledge of kind of how to do it and make it and sell things as kind of a little side hustle type thing. I could definitely see that being on the East Coast we're further removed, but
we do sell to the. So one thing I should also tell your the listeners or the watchers here is that we also have an Amazon.com channel.
Okay.
And so we do also sell on Amazon, and we sell across this country.
But in terms of who's going to be going to be doing the work as you expand, do you feel like there's a workforce of people who already have kind of the skills and the knowledge in the community, or is part of kind of the growth of this going to be kind of bringing people up to the standards that that your co-op is going to be setting in the market?
I would say it's a little bit of both. So I would say that at this stage, that most, actually let's back up. Most of the folks who are making lays as part of the informal economy, are people who can't participate in the workforce generally, right? So there are a lot of the people who are making them just in general are grandmothers, are like elderly folks, disabled folks, young mothers, are mothers and young mothers and mothers who stay at home with their children. And for us, we've also incorporated formerly incarcerated folks, right? So one of our first lay, everybody in our first group of lay makers were formerly incarcerated, with the exception of myself. It's like because they had just gotten released, they needed a quick job, they knew how to make lays, and because in jail they were braiding hair, so a lot of those kind of things came into play as well. I mean, and I'm talking specifically about a man that we had hired, and there had been interest from his kind of support group, his I forgot what they're called, but the recidivism, support group. They had asked us, do you need more workers, for this next round? We had too many workers this time around, so we couldn't hire any more of them. But, people were interested in it. So that's kind of like, and all the people who have done that have also probably made lays for special occasions. So either they were dancers, like Polynesian dancers that had to make lays because that's kind of part of the dance curriculum, or they were making them as gifts and they had learned from their grandma. So those are the folks who, first come, and can make lays. Now, our lays, the product themselves and the development of the product themselves, our lays are specifically not the most intricate or complicated lays for 2 reasons. First is, we have to make a profit on them. So labor is our biggest expense. And so lays we can't take, hours and hours to make a lay, right? Because the lay would be so expensive. But the other thing is that they are simple enough that we can also hire folks who've never made lays before. And we've had that, and the interesting thing is that, so last year we had interns from a local charter school send their students to the Lei Company, and they made a bunch of the lays. So it's intricate enough that folks who have skills can make them and make them quickly, but then it's basic enough that folks who don't know much about lei making but want to learn can also learn to make those and make them look really well enough to be able to sell, to meet our kind of quality of standards to sell. And then the other thing I would add that is, I think, part of what's exciting is that, we get, primarily our workforce is, Polynesian, Micronesian, or Melanesians, right? Is that sometimes you get a woman who never made leis in her life. Like, she used to be the one that used to watch everybody, but she gets those flowers in her hands and creates beautiful things. And the only thing we can say about that is that that's the ancestors working through you. Like, she had never made a lei. She was so surprised. She's like, I can't believe I did it. Like, she was making a lei, a special order for her niece or something like that. And, and it was like, wow, I could create this beautiful thing, and it creates a spark that we try to then keep going. Yeah, so I would say that's kind of who the workforce is.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we grow, the other thing is, as we grow, we're going to need, other people who may not be of our community. Like, we have a buyer who's Latino, but has, really loves our company, loves our products, loves to, he's a floral buyer for us, who really wants to help grow the business.
Mm-hmm. And so for those kind of workers, as they come in and as you're expanding, what does the on-ramp for kind of becoming a member look like in terms of, capital contribution, amount of time they need to work with the co-op before they can become a member, kind of other requirements that you'll have for people to go from the, maybe you're hiring them on for a season as a temporary thing versus kind of becoming a core member of the team.
So this is how it stands as of right now, and this can change tomorrow as we learn more and more ways of how people are running cooperatives. So the first thing is that there are 2 training programs that has to happen. So the first thing that happens is that all workers, no matter, with the exception of like our accountants and those kind of consultants, like the attorneys, everybody has to go through something called the Roots of Success training. And the Roots of Success training is a graduate level environmental literacy training for people with low levels of education. It's a really inexpensive training, and at the end of it, or at any point of it, they can get a federally recognized environmental literacy workforce training certificate. And in that training, the reason the training goes into like general, like, one-on-one environmental literacy, but then we go into transportation, wastewater, transportation, food and agriculture, just everything that you need to learn about our natural and built environments. And the reason why we have all lei makers or anybody who works with us go through that is because leis come from an agricultural supply chain. It's the cut flower industry. And when we start talking about, wanting to have a more environmentally responsible lei, people are like, huh? And then but when they take this training, then they understand why.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives them, baseline environmental literacy training that they apply to their job, but also to the other issues in their community. So that's the first training they have to do. The second training is a training that we do with a sister nonprofit called the Pacifica Center, and the Pacifica Center has a community wealth building program. And that is basically where people get their business 101. So they go through like a week-long training that has marketing. It has, it has marketing. It has like projections, kind of like all the different pieces to like
how to read a balance sheet, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like how to run the business, so they can understand the administrative and like financial and economic transactions that comes up on a regular basis. They learn what an audit is. They learn how to read balance sheets, those types of things. And then we do that with an organization called a New America. They do it in tandem to do the business planning workshop. And so those are the true trainings. And then folks have to work equivalent of 1,000 hours. They have to they have to pay a capital contribution of $2,000. And they have to bring on an investor at $1,000. And so those are the things that and everybody who is currently working with us is on some, they're on the track at some different levels.
And so what's the total number of folks right now and kind of who are involved?
7.
Cool. Great. So, for folks who are interested in checking out the offering, it's on Crowdfund Main Street. It's structured as, I believe, non-voting preferred shares, so very similar to something like Equal Exchange. Actually, if you Equal Exchange, the worker co-op does fair trade kind of coffee and chocolate importing. Has sort of pioneered this particular model where it's like 5% target dividend, and then on a yearly basis before any patronage refund is paid out. So the structure looks very similar to that. So in terms of like learning about that structure, was it the lawyer who kind of talked to you about the investment structures, or where did you get the info about kind of how to approach that?
I think the original, Jenny Casson did help a little bit with that. I mean, she's the one who drafted pretty much helped us draft that. But I think originally how I learned about that was through the Out of the Boss. It was a worker cooperative manual that the Sustainable Economies Law Center.
Okay.
Oh, Think Outside the Boss. That's what it was called. And I was like, oh gosh, I forgot what it was called. That was like my intro to worker cooperatives for my MBA. Like we had to read that manual actually. And so I think that's where it first started. And then, when we, hired Jenny as an attorney, I think she helped us like weigh out kind of what the different, avenues we could take. And I think for us that at the time, that was the best one. It was the best one primarily because, we are a business who wants to be around for 1,000 years. I mean, in the development of our business kind of, our theory of change that we have around our business. I studied the temple construction company in Japan. I forgot what it was, but it's like the oldest, longest family run, except for towards the end, company that has been around for 1,000 years. And we tried to, in our kind of philosophical framework, know that, that's, like we were looking at the long term way. And that it seemed like the best way to be able to have that as an offering to investors is, the annual yearly dividend, for perpetuity. As long as we're, sustainable and alive. And have you ever heard of the evergreen businesses? Yeah. So I follow, our board follows the Tugboat Institute. And we're really, really inspired by the work that they do as well. So because this is not, lei making has been going on for a millennia or more. I'm going to have you guess. When do you think, on record, in recorded history, was the first lei ever sold?
Sold.
Let's
call it 1842.
No.
5
BC. Remember, leis are also called flower garlands. right? Like, so, you know, in terms of the continental, yes, absolutely, leis are attributed Pacifica peoples. But
Mm-hmm.
flowers, the roles of flowers and the roles of flower garlands or leis in history of humanity, the
Mm.
first recorded flower garland that was ever sold was in 5 BC. And it was this like florist or flower farmer who was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get these flower garlands to the pharaoh somewhere? Like it's written on some like Dead Sea Scroll somewhere. It's actually, you can see it in Flower Confidential, the book,
Mm-hmm.
which is also part of our like reading list. Um, you know, so you know, when you think about that from like the course of human history, leis are really exciting. This is a business that's going to go on and on and on because it has been going on and on and on since before we ever started.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm hoping our investors will get really excited about that too.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to chat about this. Has been really interesting and informative. Any final thoughts you want to share?
Um, you know, I hope you all consider us, you know, as an opportunity to be a part of your investment portfolio. We have tried to make our investment as accessible to folks as possible. And if you want to, you know, align your values with your money or your money with your values, you know, we would gladly help you do that. And mahalo, which means thank you.